My name is Morgan. I am 29 years old. And last August, at my grandmother May Green's funeral, I learned in one whispered sentence that my family had already divided what was never theirs to claim. The service was held in a chapel with tall, stained glass windows, the kind that makes even silence feel heavy. We stood in black, listening to the minister speak of legacy and love. But when the last hymn faded, my aunt leaned close, perfume sharp in my nose, and whispered, "Half of that $800,000 house is mine." She smiled as if the casket only held a ledger. That was the first blow. I held an envelope so tightly in my hand the paper bent. Inside it were documents sealed with the county crest papers I had not yet dared to open. For as long as I can remember, family gatherings were less about togetherness and more about hierarchy. At the center stood Clara, my sister, the golden child. Even at the funeral, in her designer dress, she drew eyes like stage lights. People circled her with compliments. Clara always had such grace. She'll carry on the family name. And then there was me, introduced as the one who works nights, a quiet afterthought in my own bloodline. The pattern had started long ago. When Clara turned 16, she was given a new Audi worth $36,000. The same year, I begged for $300 to fix the brakes on my Honda. My father's reply, "You're old enough to figure it out." In college, tuition checks of $45,000 a year flowed easily for Clara's private university. I was told loans would build character. By graduation, I carried $86,000 in debt. Clara walked across her stage debt-free. Then came her boutique startup in 2020. It collapsed in under a year. Yet my parents drained $75,000 from retirement accounts to give her a fresh start. I questioned it once. My mother's sharp reply silenced me. "Family helps family. Stop being selfish." I told myself it did not matter. But resentment has a way of keeping its receipts. I worked late nights in consulting, saving until I had over $120,000 in my own account. That number was not for show. It was proof that effort could build what favoritism could not. So when my grandmother May once told me, one day, "Morgan, I've made sure you'll be taken care of," I believed her. Those words carried me through the years, through the lonely dinners and unpaid debts of recognition. But standing in that chapel, hearing my aunt's whisper, I felt the floor tilt. Because what they did not know was that the Green Family Trust had its own rules, and I was not as powerless as they believed. I should have seen it coming when cameras at the reception caught Clara smiling like it was her engagement party rather than our grandmother's farewell. I should have known better when cousins posted on social media about the family estate as if it were already theirs. Still, part of me held hope. Hope that this time, this inheritance, this reading of the will would finally be fair. What I did not know was that the envelope in my hand held more than paper. It held the beginning of a storm. This part matters. I make a living turning mess into order. Folks hire me when the numbers keep them up at night. I sort their ledgers, mark their due dates, and show them where the leaks are. My own place is small and quiet, a one-bedroom with evening light across the kitchen tiles. Bills sit in a blue folder. The envelope from the funeral rests under a brass paperclip I found at a thrift store years ago. When the room is still, I can hear the paper breathe. My family is less orderly. My mother speaks in plans that always begin tomorrow. My father avoids answers by polishing his glasses. My aunt counts life in totals and entitlements. She treats a casserole like a balance sheet. And Clara, my sister, is the golden child. She has a way of turning a hallway into a runway. If a room has a center, she finds it, and the rest of us orbit. Her husband, Daniel, arrived a few years back with cufflinks and solutions. He speaks softly, but he always brings a folder. For as long as I can remember, praise gathered where Clara stood, and responsibility settled where I did. At gatherings, they would introduce her as the one carrying the family legacy, then gesture toward me with a smile that never reached their eyes. "Morgan works nights, dependable." The word sounded like a polite door closing. I do not measure life only by feelings. I count it by facts. My grandmother May's estate sits near $2 million by any reasonable appraisal. The lake house that holds every summer memory is worth about $800,000 on a conservative day. The tax installment on that property came due last week, not next month. Not 6 weeks from now, last week. I paid it before anyone asked. Because that is what I do when something with our name on it needs doing. I keep the receipts. What they did not know was simple when I paid that bill. I took photographs of the stamped window, saved digital copies of the receipt, and printed 2 hard copies on heavy paper. I do not point to these things in a crowd. I keep them close. The way a careful person keeps a spare key, the pattern that trained me to be this way did not arrive overnight. It came in little cuts. When Clara wrecked her birthday Audi, my parents called it stress and helped her choose another. When my Honda needed brakes, I was told to be resourceful. When private school tuition came due for Clara, $45,000 a year checks appeared like rain. When my tuition posted, I was handed a pamphlet about federal loans and a smile that said, "You will be fine." When Clara's boutique business collapsed, $75,000 of retirement money floated her toward a beach vacation with a caption about manifesting. When I asked for a small bridge loan once, $300 to cover an emergency repair, I was given advice. Advice does not stop a leak. I kept my head down. I worked. Over time, I tucked away more than $120,000 in savings. I do not parade that number. I only mention it because people like to assume that anyone who says no must be broke or bitter. No is a boundary, not a balance. A few months before the funeral, my mother proposed a simple rule over coffee at her kitchen table, where the placemats never change, no signatures without me present. At the time, she wanted protection from a contractor who loved to shove papers across countertops. I agreed. The rule made sense. It still does. I wrote it down on an index card and slid it into the blue folder. Because rules should live somewhere, you can find them. Now we come to the part folks often miss. Families like mine run on appearances. They prefer a bright photo over a clean ledger. At the reception after the funeral, no bridesmaids were in sight. It was not that kind of day, but cousins in dark suits posed like they were. Someone raised a glass and called Clara the future. My name floated by on a draft of polite words. Daniel stood near the photographer with, "Yes," a folder tucked under his arm. I made a note of that. Men like Daniel do not carry paper for decoration. I should have known then that some plan was in motion. A plan always is. When there is property sitting quiet and a family unused to the word no, still, I believed in what my grandmother once told me at her dining room window. Long before the illness, I have made sure you will be taken care of. Morgan. Not because you ask, but because you do the right thing when no one watches. She did not raise her voice. She did not have to. The immediate stake is plain enough to write down. If I look away, even for a week, I could lose my right to contest any move against the house. If someone slips a document into the wrong file, if a lender is coaxed into starting paperwork on a refinancing, we could spend months untangling what never should have been tied. The trust, Green Family Revocable Trust, holds the title, but paper can be made to look confident when it is not. People see a letterhead and forget how often ink tells a story that is not true. So I lie quiet, but not asleep. The envelope from the funeral stays where I can see it. The keys to my apartment hang on a hook by the door, one spare in a tiny dish no one has ever asked to borrow. On my desk sits the blue folder, spine worn smooth from years of being pulled down and put back. Inside, behind the index card with the rule, there is a second envelope with a raised seal and a date that matters. I have not opened it yet. Not because I am afraid, but because timing, like record keeping, is a craft. Here is one more piece you should know, because it explains what comes later. Daniel believes the world can be managed with confident sentences. My aunt believes it can be claimed with volume. My mother believes peace can be purchased if you give enough to the loudest person in the room. My father believes that if he is quiet long enough, the storm will pass. I used to believe that too. Then I learned that quiet only helps if the paper in your hand is clean. What they did not know, what they still do not know, I suspect, is that attention is not the same thing as authority. The trust does not clap. It does not nod at toasts. It does not pose for photographs. It sits in a drawer at a law office under soft light and a wall clock that never hurries. It waits for the person named to speak in clear terms. I do not need to raise my voice to be heard there. Before I left for the reception, I slid the evidence I already had into a smaller sleeve inside the folder: the tax receipt, the photo of the county window, the online confirmation, each printed once and saved twice. I am not superstitious, but I respect a tidy chain of custody. If the evening turned into a performance, I intended to leave the theater with a record. I suppose this is the part where an older voice on the radio would clear their throat and say, "Now listen, there are a few things worth remembering. First, People will tell you that family comes first. And often they will mean that their needs come before your boundaries. Second, a promise without paper is a story. A story without dates is a wish. Third, the person who stays calm the longest tends to win, provided the facts are in their pocket. The envelope is still under its paperclip. The ink on the seal has a faint shine when the lamp leans just right. I can feel the chapter turning. Some chapters you do not force. You let arrive. When it does, I will place the paper in the light and read what my grandmother set down while everyone else was practicing their smiles. The object you should picture is simple: a folder on a table, a dish with a spare key, a rule on an index card, and a sealed page waiting its moment. I am ready. And that readiness is not loud, but it is real. This part matters. The funeral reception was held in the Green family's old colonial house, the one with white columns and a porch that creaked when more than 3 people stood on it. People carried plates of food and traded condolences, as if grief could be managed in small servings. I kept near the edge of the room, watching. Clara, my sister. The golden child moved through the crowd as if it were her private celebration. She posed for photographs with relatives, her dress catching the light like sequins on a stage. Daniel, her husband, stayed close, a leather folder tucked under his arm. Folders mean something in my family. They are not carried for decoration. I heard the first slip near the punch bowl. My aunt, with a glass in her hand, told a neighbor, "By next month, the house will be refinanced, and Clara will finally get the breathing room she deserves." She said it casually, as though such decisions were already agreed upon. I froze. The house, the lake property appraised near $800,000, was not hers to refinance. It sat inside the Green family revocable trust. And more than that, my grandmother had left explicit instructions: no transfer, no refinancing, no signatures without me present. Daniel must have noticed me listening. He leaned to whisper in Clara's ear, and she laughed too loudly, as if volume could erase what I had just heard. Later that evening, as coats were being gathered, Daniel approached me directly. "Morgan," he said smoothly, "there are opportunities we should consider. The bank is flexible. You'll come around." I did not raise my voice. No signatures without me present. That's the rule. He smiled, the way a person smiles when they believe they have already won. "Ruled spent," he said, tapping his folder. I looked at the folder and then at him. Not this one. What they did not know was that I had already photographed the tax receipt, saved digital copies, and tucked away duplicates. Their whispers in the reception hall were not speculation, they were evidence. I should have seen it coming when cousins began posting photographs with captions about our family estate, as though possession were proven by a smile on social media. I should have known better when Clara raised her glass for a toast that sounded less like mourning and more like an announcement. But sometimes you want to believe you still belong, even when the paper in your hand says otherwise. That evening, I went home, placed the blue folder squarely on my kitchen table, and clipped the envelope from the funeral on top. My rule card sat inside, crisp and undeniable, no signatures without me present. The storm was not coming, it was already here. That night I did what I have always done when a room fills with noise. I went home, turned off the television, and laid the paper flat. The blue folder sat in the middle of my small table like a compass. The envelope from the funeral rested on top under its brass paperclip. I could still hear my aunt's whisper and see Daniel's easy smile. But paper has a way of quieting a person. It asks for light, a straight edge, and patience. First, the tax installment. I pulled out the printed receipt on heavy stock. The county crest raised under my thumb, paid in full. Amount just over $2,100. Date last week. Morning hour stamped by the clerk's window. I had taken a photograph of that window as I stepped away. The kind of proof that feels dull until you need it. In my phone were 2 copies of the digital confirmation. On my drive, a third. Redundancy is not paranoia. It is respect for how often people misplace truth. Then the bank record. I scrolled to the line item that matched the tax amount, the posted date, the small note I wrote to myself months ago about setting alerts for anything tied to the property. A person can forget a lot after a long day. A ledger forgets nothing. I printed the page and slipped it into a clear sleeve. Next came the photograph of the county door, angled just slightly to the right so the seal and the street sign were visible together. The morning light in that picture made the gold lettering glow. I have learned that details sell a story. And they also save one. A skeptic can argue with a sentence. They have a harder time arguing with sunlight on a sign. I called the clerk's office just before closing. A familiar voice answered. "This is Marla," she said. And I could picture her neat stack of forms and the little ceramic bird that sits by her keyboard. "Marla, it's Morgan Green," I said. "I want to confirm the tax installment for the lake house. Paid last week. Would you mind checking the parcel?" There was a pause. The sound of paper being moved. The small clack of a keyboard. "Paid," she said. "Cleared. I see the stamp. You're all set." "Thank you," I said. I do not gush. I do not ask for more than the record offers. Would you please make a note that I confirm today? End of day. "I will," she said. And I could hear the pen touch down. I thanked her again and set the phone on the table. I built a simple chain of custody because I have seen how messy families become when truth is left floating. I placed the receipt behind the bank printout, slid the photograph of the door into the next sleeve, and wrote a small title on a card: tax installment. Last week confirmed by clerk. End of day. The handwriting steadied me. I am not strong because I raise my voice. I am strong because I keep it steady. What I did not open, not yet, was the envelope from the funeral cream paper. Raised seal. A date in the lower corner that I could feel through the flap. Timing matters. If you have ever watched a storm roll over a lake, you know that opening a window too early only lets in wind. Better to stand ready and choose your moment. I should have known the phone would ring before the tea cooled. "Daniel." Of course. His tone carried the confidence of a person who has been clapped on the back for most of his adult life. "Morgan," he began. "Everyone is stretched thin. The lender is just getting paperwork started so we can be nimble. We will need your cooperation soon." "An application is not an agreement," I said. "You know the rule." He tried warmth next. "No one is trying to edge you out. Think of Clara's position. Think of your parents. We can finalize everything quickly if you just sign a temporary consent. No signatures without me present." I repeated. "And since I am present now, my answer is no. The trust controls the title. And the taxes are current. I have the receipt. The county has the note." Silence. The short kind. That means a person is recalibrating. "You are being inflexible," he said finally. "Inflexible is how bridges stand." I replied. "If the lender calls, tell them to hold their paper until we meet with counsel." I ended the call. Not rudely, just cleanly, and set the phone face down. A person has the right to end a conversation that goes in circles, especially when the circle is in someone else's interest. The next morning, I emailed the estate lawyer whose name my grandmother had once written on a sticky note. I used plain language. Title sits in the Green Family Revocable Trust. I am the named successor trustee. Taxes current. Family members are discussing refinancing and implying urgency. Please schedule a reading of the instrument and a review of the relevant clauses. His assistant responded within an hour with a polite confirmation and a time Tuesday morning. I wrote those words on an index card Tuesday morning and slid it behind the envelope with the raised seal. I felt the balance shift. What they did not know was that the room we were walking toward would not clap for confidence. It would respect paper. By midday, a cousin's social post floated into my messages. An unsteady caption about the estate moving forward and breathing room at last. The photograph showed Clara on the porch of the lake house, her hand on the rail as if she were already welcoming guests. It is amazing what a camera does to memory. It turns the future into a prop. I did not comment. I saved the image, then I set my phone away and went for a walk. The late summer air carried the dry smell of cut grass. I passed the small bakery where my grandmother used to buy rolls on Sundays. There is a comfort in walking past the same windows, the same dogs tugging against the same leashes. It reminds you that the world is larger than a family's appetite. That evening, I practiced what older folks on the radio used to call putting your house in order. I labeled the sleeves inside the folder: taxes, bank record, clerk confirmation, photographs, rule card, correspondence. In the back, I added a blank pad for notes during the meeting. I laid a pen across it. The lamp on my table warmed the paper to a soft cream. The brass paperclip held the envelope just where I wanted it. When you are dealing with people who love to improvise, your best answer is a steady script built from facts. Before bed, I called my father. He picked up on the second ring, voice tired. "Dad," I said. "I am meeting with the lawyer Tuesday morning to read through the trust and clarify next steps. I wanted you to hear that from me." He cleared his throat. "Your mother thinks we should keep the peace," he said. "We will," I replied. "Peace is key at paper. No signatures without me. Taxes are paid. Let's do this the right way." A pause. Longer than Daniel's. Softer, too. "Your grandmother trusted you," he said. "She told me you would know what to do." I closed my eyes. "I will," I said. After we hung up, I stood at the window and watched the streetlights blink on. I thought about the way people tug on a single thread and expect a sweater to hold. I thought about my aunt's whisper, Glara's smile, Daniel's folder. I thought about my grandmother's hand on the dining room chair the last time she spoke about the house. Voice low, eyes steady, "Take care of it. Morgan, not because it is grand, but because it is ours." Tuesday morning would come. And with it, the reading of the instrument. Between now and then, I would sleep, eat, and carry on like a person with a job to do. Storms do not impress a shoreline that has been there 100 years. It simply takes the shape of the wind and waits it out. Tuesday morning arrived with the kind of stillness that feels heavier than noise. I woke early, straightened the blue folder, and slipped the envelope with its raised seal inside. The index card with Tuesday morning written across it sat on top like a quiet reminder. Today, the paper speaks. The law office was a brick building downtown with a brass plaque that read Harrison and Lowe, Estate Council. Inside, the waiting room carried the hush of money being guarded, leather chairs, framed diplomas, and a clock that ticked without hurry. Clara entered first, Daniel at her side with the inevitable folder. My aunt followed, her perfume arriving a second before she did, and my parents trailed close behind, looking tired. I nodded, polite but distant. The lawyer, Mr. Harrison, gathered us around a polished oak table. He adjusted his glasses and opened a thick binder. "We are here to review the Green Family Revocable Trust," he said. His voice was even trained to carry authority without effort. He began with the basics: property, assets, appraisal, the lake house, conservatively valued at $800,000. Investments totaling nearly $1.2 million. A smaller condominium downtown, worth just under $400,000. The numbers were precise. The weight of them sat in the room like a guest no one had invited. Then came the clause I had carried on an index card: no transfer, refinance, or encumbrance shall be executed without the written consent and physical presence of Morgan Green, successor trustee. Daniel shifted in his chair. Clara looked at him, then at the lawyer. My aunt exhaled sharply. Mr. Harrison continued, reading without pause. The trust further stipulates that any attempt to alter or bypass this clause constitutes immediate forfeiture of beneficial interest by the attempting party. Silence. For once, silence belonged to me. Clara broke it first. "Surely, there's room for interpretation. Grandma would not have wanted us tied up in red tape." Mr. Harrison closed the binder softly. "The wording is not ambiguous. It is specific and binding." Daniel tried again. "Perhaps we can find a temporary arrangement. A bridge loan." I leaned forward, my voice steady. "The taxes are current. I paid them last week. I have the receipt, the clerk's confirmation, and the bank record. The property is not in jeopardy. There is no justification for urgency." I laid the documents on the table one by one. The photograph of the county office door, the stamped receipt, the bank printout, the index card with the date. Not loud, not dramatic, simply undeniable. My aunt's voice rose. "This is ridiculous. You're strangling opportunity. Clara deserves support. She has always carried the family forward." I looked at her, then at Clara. Golden children carry applause, not receipts. I was asked to carry proof, and I have. Mr. Harrison nodded. "The trust recognizes Morgan as the responsible party unless and until they sign otherwise. No change will occur." The weight shifted then. Daniel's confidence cracked. Clara's smile faltered. My aunt's protest wilted. My parents looked down at their hands. What they did not know was that I had already scheduled a follow-up with the financial institution. By the end of the day, Every account tied to the trust would have a freeze note. No alterations without successor trustee present. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, I felt steady like a shoreline that has seen storms before and knows it will see them again. As we filed out, Clara stopped me at the door. Her voice was low but sharp. "You think this makes you powerful, it only makes you alone." I met her eyes. Alone with the paper. That's enough. Outside, the late morning sun caught the brass plaque, and for a moment, it glowed. This part matters. That afternoon, we did not go back to the house with the creaking porch. Mr. Harrison offered the small conference room just off the lobby. A square space, with a window that looked onto a brick alley and a clock that could be heard even with the door shut. He set a carafe of water on a tray. He left us alone. He said he would return if needed. Polite, professional, and gone. I placed my blue folder in the center of the table. The envelope with the raised seal rested on top. The index card that read Tuesday morning slid beneath my thumb like a reminder that calm is a choice. My mother sat to my left, hands folded, eyes on her knuckles the way a person stares at a shoreline when they do not want to look at the water. My father took the seat beside her. He polished his glasses with the soft corner of a handkerchief. Across from me, Clara crossed one ankle over the other. Daniel leaned forward with his usual neat posture and the same leather folder. My aunt stood for a moment, undecided, then sat at the head of the table as if she could claim the angle and therefore the outcome. I spoke first. "This will be simple," I said. "The trust is clear. The taxes are current. No signatures occur without me present. No refinancing proceeds without my written consent. We are going to put this in writing so there is no confusion in the morning." Daniel clicked his pen twice, then he caught himself and set it down. "We are not trying to sidestep you, Morgan," he said. "We only want breathing room. The lender has started an application. That is all. A temporary consent from you would allow us to explore better terms. Later we can align with the trust. An application is wind." I replied. "Consent is structure. You will not have both." Clara leaned in. "You are making this personal lawn." "It became personal when you tried to move paper while posting photographs on the porch." I said. I kept my tone even. Older voices on the radio taught me that even is how you get heard. "I am not here to argue. I am here to set a boundary and give you a choice." My aunt exhaled through her nose. "You have always enjoyed saying no," she said. "No," I answered, "has often been the only honest word available." I slid 2 typed pages across the table. I had drafted them the night before. Not because I expected a fight, but because a clean page helps people hear. The first page read option 1, the second read option 2. "Option 1, I said, tapping the first page. "You will withdraw every application and request you or your agents have submitted regarding the lake house. You will send a confirmation email to me and to Mr. Harrison acknowledging that no mortgage, refinance, or lien is pending, proposed, or under consideration. You will return any spare keys in your possession to the office to be logged and held until we decide together who keeps what. You will do these things by Tuesday, 5 in the evening." I paused, letting the clock speak for a breath. "Option 2, I continued, tapping the second page. "If 5 in the evening arrives without the written withdrawal and the keys, I will file a notice at the recorder's office first thing the next morning. The notice will add a freeze note to the property records and notify the common lenders in our county that the trustee's consent is required for any action. Escrow will hold if anyone tries to move paper. That process is not loud. It is effective." My mother's voice was small. "There must be a third option," she said, not looking up. "There is," I said gently. "The third option is talking in circles and letting strangers decide for us later. I am not choosing that." Daniel tried to pivot. "Think of the opportunity cost," he said. "Rates move. The market moves. We have an opening now. In 6 months it could be gone. The trust is not a weather vane," I said. "My grandmother did not build this so you could chase wind." Clara's smile went tight. "You enjoy sounding righteous," she said. "I enjoy sounding clear," I said. "Clarity saves time. It saves money. It saves the relationships that can be saved." My father cleared his throat. "It would help me," he said, "to hear the rule again." I lifted the index card. No signatures without me present. I read aloud. That is the rule your wife asked for at her kitchen table. It protected you then. It protects all of us now. My aunt tapped a manicured nail against the table. And if we do not sign your papers today, she asked, what will you do? Call the sheriff. I will write what happened. I said, then I will do exactly what I described on option 2. The paper will move. That is all. Daniel opened his folder. Inside were 3 printouts. A neat stack of what I recognized as lender marketing sheets. He turned them toward me like a waiter offering a menu. Just review these. He said, no one is asking for your decision now. We want cooperation, not confrontation. I did not touch the pages. This is a confrontation because you made one. I said, not unkindly, you moved to start an application without me. You announced outcomes to cousins on the internet. You spoke of refinancing at a funeral reception. A person who is being reasonable does not start with the lender, they start with the trustee. Clara looked at our mother. You are really going to let Morgan do this? My mother still watched her hands. The trust is what it is. She said finally. There it was. The smallest ally is often a sentence of acceptance. I slid a pen across the table. If you choose option 1, sign here. I said, tapping the line at the bottom, this is not a contract. It is a receipt of understanding. Mr. Harrison will witness. No one reached. The clock in the hallway struck the quarter hour. The sound walked calmly into the room and sat with us. This is your moment to keep the peace. I said, softer now. Return the keys. Withdraw the application. Write the email. If you do those 3 things by Tuesday at 5 in the evening, we are done. We will revisit the finances in a month with the attorney and a calendar in front of us. I will make time. I will listen. But I will not be hurried by anyone's anxiety or pride. Daniel's jaw worked. You will regret putting us in a corner. He said. Corners are where rooms begin. I answered. They also hold them up. My aunt pushed back from the table and stood. You think because the paper says your name, you have won, she said. Let me tell you something. Families do not live on paper. They also do not live well without it. I said. I stood. Not abruptly. Not as a flourish. Just enough to signal that we were finished. I gathered my folder, slid the envelope into place, replaced the index card. Mr. Harrison opened the door a moment later, as if he had felt the air change. Do we have an understanding? He asked. We have 2 options. I said, they will choose by Tuesday at 5 in the evening. He nodded. I will expect an email. He said to the far side of the table. He did not need to say from whom. In the hallway, my father touched my sleeve. Your grandmother would have liked the way you spoke, he said. Firm, not cruel. Firm is what the house needs. I said, the rest is preference. Outside, the air had that late summer brightness that makes brick glow. I put my folder on the passenger seat and sat with my hands on the wheel for a moment. People think strength is a raised voice. I have learned it is a steady plan with a clock beside it. I drove home slowly, past the bakery with the Sunday rolls, turned at the corner with the tall elm. In my kitchen, I set the folder on the table and wrote 1 line at the top of my pad, deadline. Tuesday, 5 in the evening. I added a second line below. If no email, file notice Wednesday. First thing. Then I made tea and left it to steep. I let the room be quiet. I watched the light slide across the envelope and the brass paperclip. The day had been about saying less and meaning more. There is a kind of peace in that. The deadline starts now. By Tuesday at 5 in the evening, no email arrived. No keys were returned. The inbox stayed empty except for a flyer from the utility company. That was my confirmation. Wednesday morning. I walked into the county recorder's office at 8 sharp, blue folder under my arm. The clerk recognized me. She had stamped my receipt weeks earlier and she did not blink when I handed her the freeze notice. Trustee consent required for all actions. I said, steady as breath. She stamped the document, and with that one sound, the house became untouchable. That same afternoon, I drove to the financial institution where the Green Trust accounts sat. I met with the branch manager, a man named Harrison, not the lawyer, but another Harrison altogether. I showed him the freeze note, the tax receipt, the consent clause. He signed the internal memo himself. Do not alter or release funds without Morgan Green present. The storm broke within hours. Clara's husband, Daniel, called, voice tight. You blindsided us. I answered evenly. You ignored the deadline. He threatened lawsuits, estrangement, humiliation. What he didn't realize was that humiliation had already landed because the refinance papers and marketing sheets he tried to bury had leaked. A cousin posted a screenshot captioned, "Guess some people mourn with dollar signs." By the next day, the town was whispering. The golden child's shine cracked. At a cousin's birthday dinner, Clara raised a glass for a toast. From the back, someone shouted, "Tell us about the $800,000 house." Silence. Her hand trembled. She sat down. My aunt's voicemails turned venomous. You're destroying this family. You'll regret this. But regret is quiet. Proof is louder. I carried proof in a folder. At Mr. Harrison's office, brass plaque. Oak desk, I laid out everything, the leaks, the screenshots, the silence past deadline. He adjusted his glasses. They may scream, but legally, they're on ice. Socially, the ice was colder. At church, Clara stood alone. At the club, Daniel's name vanished from lists. Invitations shrank. For as long as I remember, I was the afterthought, the responsible shadow of a golden child. Now, the light had shifted not because I demanded it, but because evidence draws its own spotlight. What I didn't know, the loudest crack was still ahead. Cornered people don't retreat. Sometimes they smash through walls. Wednesday, the notice was filed. The lender flagged the account, and the noise thinned like rain after a storm. Sunday night, I closed the blue folder, dropped the spare keys in a dish by the door, and listened to the new quiet. I took stock. The lake house stayed in the Green family trust. Taxes current. Title clean. The bank froze. Changes unless I appeared in person. The refinance rumor evaporated. A loan officer even apologized. I thanked him. I didn't gloat. Family members walked like people on cracking ice. Clara stopped posting photos. Daniel stopped passing files. My aunt softened into faux pity, leaving a message about mediating as the adult. I deleted it. Sometimes the grown thing is to hang up. One evening, my mother called softly. We went by the lake road. It looked good. It will stay that way, I said. Grandma wanted care, not spectacle. She paused. You were very firm. We raised you strong and forgot. Strong wouldn't always serve us. Strength isn't a weapon, I said. It's a boundary. It protects everyone the same. That silence was an apology. Days later, Mr. Harrison closed the file. You followed the document as written. If there's movement, it happens with everyone present. Good, I said. Better coffee and calendars than another ambush. Walking home, I bought rolls from Grandma's favorite bakery. Routine can be a prayer. You do it because you're still here. Consequences came quietly. A party invitation moved to a park after I quoted the clause. Daniel tried to show up unannounced. I texted, "This conversation will be scheduled, not improvised." No reply. That's an answer. 2. The town drifted to new gossip. I slept through the night again. People ask what I gained. Yes. Assets. The lake house worth $800,000. The estate over $1.2 million. A condo near $400,000. But the true gain was internal, realizing love without respect demands discounts. Respect without love gives distance. To keep both, you need a ledger and a spine. I learned to thank aloud clerks, lawyers, even Dad for a hallway sentence that steadied me, and Grandma for the clause that guarded the house, and, in its quiet way, me. If you're listening with a knot in your stomach and a family calling your boundaries selfish, hear me. Calm isn't surrender. It's skill. Keep records. Put rules on paper. Speak once. Then move the document. You don't need to win a room. You only need to hold a line. When I shelved the blue folder and saw the keys glint in the dish, I felt the old urge to ask if I'd gone too far. Then I remembered Clara's face when the clause landed, and the silence that finally gave me space. Some questions answer themselves. So let me ask you instead, what would you have done? Called the lender? Filed the notice? Or walked away? Tell me where you're listening from. Tell me how you keep your life from being mortgaged to someone else's storm. We kept it clean. We kept it kind. And when kindness wasn't returned, we kept it documented. That was enough.